We few, we happy few, we band of brothers.
Well, hello and welcome along to an extremely special We Happy Few 506 podcast, The Nearly Men. My co-host Doug is in Berlin with a massive smirk on his face. How you doing, Doug? You're going to be excited by this one, aren't you?
Yeah, I've been really looking forward to this. Been a fan of this particular man's work and podcast for a little bit of time. So yeah, I'm very much looking forward to
You are a very sad fangirl, I know.
it.
Proper intro, because I wrote all these notes like a week ago, so I need to trust that they're still good, but I think they are. Okay, here we go. We have a very special guest today, a historian that needs no introduction, but I'm going to, otherwise you won't be able to know who he is if it's not visual. We have James Holland, writer, broadcaster, festival chair, and I scraped this from the internet, so I did not apply this nomenclature. It says history babe. I don't know if you want to wrap your arms around that or not, James, but welcome to the pod.
Oh, well, thank you very much for having me on. It's a singular honour, chaps.
Before we get cracking on all things history, and we're going to do some World War II on screen, TV shows, films, good, bad, terrible, that sort of thing. I noticed doing a bit of research that you are a keen cricketer.
Yeah. Oh, God, I love my cricket.
Okay. Can I guess what you do?
Yeah.
He looks like a spin bowler.
That's what I think. I think he bats 7 and bowls off spin.
No, I bat 1 to 4 and I bowl absolute pies if required.
Okay.
He bats 4 and doesn't bowl, or he bats 7 and bowls off spin. One of the two.
Yeah. No. I mean, I flatter myself these days. I mean, I have sort of noticed the last couple of seasons that sort of last season was really good. This season hasn't been so good. The powers are sort of feels like they're waning a little bit. I need to sort of get myself a bit more in shape and get working on the bowling machine a bit more.
Yeah, it's harder to stay in shape once you get, into the 50s, and I'm discovering that myself. Yeah.
No. It's hardcore, but I absolutely love it. I love watching it. I love playing it. And I'm very involved in my local club, and it's great fun.
Yeah.
Well, there is something that Matthew forgot to mention. You are, of course, a co-host of the We Have Ways podcast.
Making you talk, yes.
We have ways of making you talk, which is a fantastic. I'm sure our listeners actually already listen to it, but if you don't, James co-hosts that with Al Murray, who's a comedian and historian. And they've done some absolutely fantastic series. My favorite being Market Garden, which was brilliant. But they've also done a series on the SAS in France, which is very good, with Tom Petch, who's been one of our guests as well. And
yeah, he's top bloke.
And a great series on the Battle of the Bulge, of which Bastogne is a part. And
yes, of course.
And I think one of your most recent ones is Burma. I haven't listened to that one yet, but that's it. I think I'm building myself up because I know it's going to be brutal.
It's actually, but the Burma one's fantastic. I mean, it's just, not the podcast, but the story. It's just incredible what they're in for. Yeah, it is a bit grueling in parts, but actually, what's amazing about it is the Burma bit that we've done is specifically about what's going on in 1945, by which the kind of worst of the Japanese have kind of passed. So it's an amazing story, really, about how people in a very, very remote corner of the world pull off an amazing victory with, in the big scheme of things, not very much. It's incredible. So anyway, that's been great fun. We're doing kind of more and more series, really. We still have a few of the sort of old school, kind of just me and Al just sort of war waffling. But series seem to go down well, and we enjoy doing.
Yeah, they're really good. It's just a great in-depth look, and you've obviously got one on D-Day and the surrounding. It's just really good. So I highly recommend.
Oh well, thank you. Well, that's very kind of you
to go to it, because it's really great in depth. It offers great insight. And also, you kind of observe like military tactics from a broad perspective, which you don't really get on many shows. You kind of think, well, what could they have done? What should they have done? And the differences between how the Allies would do something tactically and how the Germans would as well. It's really, really great to listen to.
Well, thank you.
One of the questions I would like to ask, just initially, just on that, before Matthew tears into the rest of it, is how did you and Al meet? Has Al always been a historian, or did he get into history because
No, he's always been obsessed with it. His dad was T.A. Paris. was
Oh,
engineer in the territorial paras, and actually was served at Suez in the 1950s. And so I think Al just sort of grew up with kind of war movies on Saturday afternoon, and his dad sort of going on about, well, of course, Bren gun was far superior to the et cetera, et cetera. And so it was just kind of in his DNA, really. And then obviously became a comedian, but he never sort of lost sight of his interest in World War II. And I think I'm not 100% sure what a heritage myth is, but I can't remember. But anyway, we got to know one another, and we used to sort of meet, not infrequently in London for a beer and just talk about the war. So it was like two blokes sitting in a pub drinking their beer, chewing the cud over kind of Sherman tanks and, who our favourite generals were and things like that. And then I got to know Tony Pastor, who runs Goalhanger. He ran Goalhanger Films, now runs Goalhanger Podcast. And he said to me, I'm really into the Second World War. Would you be interested in doing a podcast? I went, yeah, sure. And he goes, yeah, but you need to do it with someone. So I said, what about Al? And it just happened that I had a hot date in London booked in with Al anyway. So I said, what do you think about doing a Second World War podcast? He went, yeah, all right. So and that was that. And here we are, kind of, 900 episodes later.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's really great, huge success, isn't it, as well? It's really fantastic.
Well, it's great fun. And, Al's a brilliant bloke, and he's, he was a good friend, but he's become a really great friend. And, we have a lot of fun on it. And, I sort of think that's okay. I sort of, every so often I have a sort of like guilt trip. I sort of think, making money out of the kind of pain and misery of the Second World War. But that's not really what it's about. It's about why we're interested in that. And the reason we're interested in it, of course, is because it's episode of greatest human drama known to the world, and certainly all the major competent nations involved. And you want to understand that, and you want to know about it, and it comes with lots of amazing kit, like whether it be Spitfires or Hawker Typhoons, or whether it be Sherman tanks and M18 Hellcats. So I kind of think it's okay.
Yeah, it's
And people make amazing
endless,
TV series about it as well. So
yeah, endless geekery. You can really geek out on it, can't you?
You absolutely can, but it's still human drama that draws us to the subject in the first place. I think. It's like, what would I have done? I mean, you guys must be even more aware of that than most.
Yeah, and I think should we get into World War II on TV and drama?
Yeah.
All right. So, what, in your opinion, makes a great World War II drama? Like, what are the elements? Because it's a two-part question. Because the second part is like, when you walk into the National Portrait Gallery and there's a really beautiful landscape painting, but it says nothing to you, even though it took about 3 years to paint and it's incredibly skillful and beautiful. Like, what are the elements that make a great World War II drama?
Great script.
Yep.
Really good script. Even better script. Great acting.
But does it have to be
and a story that's kind of that's rooted in reality rather than total fantasy for me?
Yeah, I think this was my point. So how close to reality does it need to be in an effort because obviously it's not podcast, I have heard your remarks on certain films or stuff about when they didn't get this right and didn't get that right and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's just I don't know. I kind of think the Second World War, the drama is so amazing that you don't need to stretch the reality too much. Obviously, it's absolutely fine to insert a completely fictional and dramatized scenario into a real scenario, but you can't start having the wrong tanks going over the bridge, and you can't because it's just wrong. You can't suddenly kind of have John Bon Jovi capturing an Enigma machine when the Americans weren't anywhere near it. You can't have Alan Turing single-handedly saving the Battle of the Atlantic. I mean, it's just nonsense. And all those things are really, really annoying. Whereas what you can do is you can depict, and this is why the script is really important. It's really important that the language they use today is yes, it's got to be, you've got to understand the camaraderie, but camaraderie is universal. So you don't need to sort of turn it into a kind of sort of a video game. Fury is just total nonsense from start to finish. And Brad Pitt might be good and the Sherman does its bit, but the whole thing is just nonsense. And you could have created a really, really fantastic drama about a tank crew, which had none of the completely ridiculous nothing, you know, far from being anything like reality that was that film. You know, and one of the things that's so brilliant about Band of Brothers, for example, and indeed Pacific and Masters, yeah, is it's real stories, it's real people, and the depiction's about right, and the language feels right, you know, and that's one of the problems with Fury as well, is that it's, you know, tank crews didn't talk to each other like that. You know, they didn't do what they were doing, and they certainly didn't end up in a kind of crossroads with lots of Waffen SS troops on foot. I mean, surrounding them. I mean, it's just absolutely absurd. And the Tiger tank scene in Fury is also completely ridiculous. I mean, tanks just didn't operate like that. And I suppose the thing I find really frustrating is that when you're watching a lot of this stuff, you just think, why are you making that up completely when the reality is actually A, real, and B, so much better than the kind of bullshit that you're pummeling out. I just don't see why you'd do it. It's just
because you in a couple of the stories, in a couple of the series, you've described some tank battles that have been absolutely phenomenal.
yeah,
I can't remember
unreal.
where it was, but coming against a Tiger tank, but because it takes them time to shoot or something,
Right.
the Sherman thing, and then you see people piling out on fire, and it's just,
Yeah,
you
absolutely. That all
described some
happened. It
really
happened.
amazing things that really happened. And
Yeah, well, you're referring to an
built.
event on Monday, the 26th of June, 1944, and that tank was commanded by Major John Semkin, the Sherwood Rangers, and he turned a corner of the street, and exactly the same time at the other end of the very dead straight street, the Rue Massieu, in a place called Fontenay-le-Pesnel, was a Tiger tank. The Tiger tank was absolutely knackered. They'd been in action for too long, and the guy who was commanding was obviously inexperienced. And John Semkin had an armor-piercing round up, you know, in the breach already. Fired it immediately. Fired 10 rounds before the Tiger could fire one. Eventually, the crew and the Tiger just went, you know, hand to hock. You know, I've had enough of this. And you know, it's stories like that are absolutely incredible. And what happens, the tank action that follows that immediate, that little one incident, there's a major tank action that evening. It's just, you know, imagine filming that. It'd be absolutely incredible. And this is my point. You don't need to make it up. You don't need to twist reality. You know, script writers and directors sometimes think they need to, but they don't. And you know, again, I go back to the Band of Brothers and Pacific and Masters. Yeah, you know, those were real stories, and they're real people, and the characters that you all portrayed absolutely rang true, and that's absolutely key.
What was your favorite out of those three? Because I think a lot of people,
Band of Brothers.
just in time, like the Pacific didn't quite hit because it was, you know, too few characters. It was sort of, you know,
Yeah, I think the Pacific deserves a sixth viewing, personally.
yeah.
And no, it's Band of Brothers, definitely. I mean, it's. I remember going to see that in a screening room in London. I was doing a piece for a newspaper, and going to see a preview of that, and just thinking, "Holy moly, this is just off the radar good." I mean, it's just amazing. I watched the first 2 episodes, and it's just. You're just sorry. Can I just let my dog in? She's just scratching at the door. Hold on a second.
Sure. I bet it's called Tiger Tank.
Actually, she's called Betsy. She's a slightly naughty Irish Terrier. She's very sweet, but she's just relentless. She just scrapes at the door until I open the door. But you know what you got right there was you know the bleached out kind of tones was very effective, wasn't it? It was really good. Everyone in it was just superb. I mean, there was not a single miscast in that. You know, you were doing it for real. You'd all trained hard. You developed a sense of camaraderie in the you know, before you started filming, and everything about it just looked right and was pretty good. I mean, you know, occasionally there's a bit too much kind of silhouetted against a skyline, but you know, that's okay. And also, you know, one has to realize that a drama is a drama. It is, you know, it might be real events, but it's a fictionalized version of real events. And you know, you're sort of cramming into an hour what might take several days of combat. And so it's a snapshot in a way, but I thought it was done absolutely brilliant. The other film, recent comparative, well, it's not really even recent anymore, but sort of, you know, of the kind of modern era of war films, is A Thin Red Line, which I think is just absolutely stunning. And again, brilliantly acted, pitch perfect. You know, from a historical point of view, can't fault it at all. It follows the Guadalcanal campaign very, very closely. All the characters in it seem very real. The way they talk is very real. The action sequences are just absolutely superb. I mean, some people don't like it because it's sort of ponderous, and they don't like all the voices and the kind of the thoughts being kind of articulated and all the rest of it. But I absolutely adore that film. I think it's an absolute classic.
Yeah.
Great acting in that film.
Just off the radar good.
He gets the letter home from his girlfriend who's dumped him.
Yeah, it's Ben Chaplin, English actor.
Yeah, English actor. It's a brilliant scene, that. Yeah, I mean, just to sort of fire back at you, James. So what we had on Band of Brothers, which I think some of the films that you're referencing clearly didn't have. Clearly, you're not a fan of U571 either. Is that it was the structure of how it was put together. So when we've spoken a lot to the producers and the exec producers who HBO just wrote the check and got out of their way. Then they got great writers and got out of their way. And the writers interviewed the main men and got out of their way. And nobody got in anybody's, except when there was the slightest thing wrong. And then you would have people, Doug will tell you this as well, descend upon you. You couldn't even take any liberties with the way you looked. Like I can remember I did some little idiosyncratic thing with the back of my helmet where I used to wear the strap that goes there, and they used to put it behind the back of the head because of the concussion and all that business. And I used to have mine dangling down, and I got told off for that. Like day one, don't do that. They never did that. He didn't do that. Don't do it. I mean, clearly I was doing it to try and get noticed, but I got told off straight away. And that's like in a microcosm what was happening the whole time. Like,
yeah, it's amazing.
Every department was empowered that way. So the costume department had absolute authority to whoop your ass if you were in continuity, cameras, the armory guys, everything. So there just wasn't any scope to kind of go off on one. But if you don't have that, if you have a script like something like Fury and you're just thinking, what happened in this film or what happened in that film, you can just get completely carried away and more detached from reality.
But I just wonder why they even did that, Fury, because like I said, there's so many histories of great tank battles during the war. Why did they even bother going to write something completely fictional just by throwing a tank and sort of three better than average looking men in it or whatever? You know what I mean? It's just kind of, well, I don't know why they even went down that journey. Surely history would have told them that, real events, as you say, James, are far more dramatic than anything that you could make up, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I've come across so many stories and episodes from the war where you think, oh God, why is someone not making a movie of that? I mean,
have you ever been asked to write one or be a consultant on one or anything?
Yeah, well, I did. I got very close to making a movie of a novel that I wrote a long time ago, actually, called A Pair of Silver Wings, which was sort of told in two time frames. So it was told in the war and in 1995. So it's a 70-plus-year-old guy kind of looking back on his wartime experiences, and he suffers these kind of two traumas. He loses his best friend, he loses the love of his life, and it's confronting that past and what happened to him and coming to terms with it. And so, the message of the film or the book was, it's never too late to kind of conquer your demons. And it's the 1995 commemorations of the end of the war, which triggers the kind of casting his mind back to what had happened in the war. And we were really close. I wrote a screenplay for that. I loved it, and sort of, I invested my money in final draft and all the rest of it. And, I really enjoyed the whole process, actually. And I found, having kind of written novels and history books, I found it sort of came comparatively easily, to be perfectly honest. And we were a long way down the line. We had Freddie Highmore lined up. We had Josh Dillon, who had been in Mamma Mia 2. And we had William Hurt lined up, Oscar winner. So much so that we actually went and had, we flew over to Oregon and saw him and had lunch with him and stuff. And he was amazing, by the way. And we had locations in Italy. We'd done some casting in Italy, and we had some locations in Italy, locations in Malta. We had planes lined up, so it was like kind of oven ready. What we just didn't have was quite all the cash. We had sort of, we had pledges, but not kind of in the, we were just sort of, so close to kind of getting it away. And then COVID happened and William Hurt died, sadly. And he just kind of lost all steam. We're still sort of plugging away at it, but kind of in a slightly half-hearted way because, as you know, kind of, it's quite a tough business out there at the moment. It's always been a tough business, but so yes, I've had a bit of experience. There's so many sort of great stories and great ideas one could do, but getting and then there was then I got contacted. Someone bought the rights to, actually Wingnut Films have bought the rights to my Dam Busters book, so that's Peter Jackson. And then there's some other Hollywood guys who were just brilliant, called Larry and John, and they bought a book I wrote on Sicily and had this great idea. And anyway, we had lots of conversations.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the wheels grind very slowly.
They do. 10 years time, they'll be like, "All right, we're going into production." You'd be like, "Wait, what?"
yeah, maybe. I mean, I'm kind of I'm not holding my breath. But it's a fascinating process. But it goes back to my original point. There are so many amazing episodes and stories around which one could make a great film and or TV series or whatever.
What's it like?
And it's frustrating.
Yeah, because obviously, from what Matthew said, our experience of Band of Brothers, like we really were kept on the narrow line. But then beyond that, we actually had the real guys show up on set.
Amazing. Wow, what a privilege.
Yeah, it really was. And
it would be much more of a privilege for knowing what their story was and having kind of
100%
been them.
Yeah,
that makes a huge difference. If you just see an old bloke, they're just an old bloke, and they might have some amazing stories, but it's not quite the same. It's a completely different experience knowing a veteran when you know what they did and who they are. And
exactly, yeah. Like when Bill Gunnier and Babe Heffron turned up, they visited several times actually. I mean, they were just forces of nature. So I was just going to ask. So obviously, what's it like for you? You must have met obviously a lot of veterans in your time, and they assist you in the writing of your historical books. So how would that work? So you would go to archives, would you, to get the actual facts? But then, I mean, obviously, there's very few veterans left. But was that a big part of your writing as well? Getting the original guys to sort of throw in anecdotes here and there, or would you not use them at all?
Yeah. So my approach has always been, I always kind of, I as I said at the beginning, I kind of think human drama is the sort of key to the whole thing of why we're interested in this. But when I was writing my first history book, which was about the Siege of Malta, I really thought about the form it would take and what my writing style would be. And I really like the old sort of reportage style of books by Cornelius Ryan, and there was a British writer called Richard Collier who wrote Eagle Day and Sands of Dunkirk and things like this. And these guys were kind of going around, Cornelius Ryan and Richard Collier were going around interviewing veterans in the 50s and 60s. Yes, there were hundreds of thousands, millions of them. They're two a penny. And they were getting these amazing stories. And I thought what I like about those books is the way they focus on individuals to kind of illustrate the bigger picture. They had an absolutely vast cast list, but I thought, well, what I'll do is I'll have a smaller cast list. And then I read a book called Finest Hour, which accompanied a BBC TV series, all about 1940. And the producers also wrote a book. And the book focused, I guess, on maybe dozen or so characters to illustrate the experience of what it was like being at Dunkirk, what it was like being a sailor and evacuating the troops, what it was like being caught up in the Battle of Britain and all the rest of it. And I thought, well, I think that's really, really good as well. So if I could combine the kind of two and have a larger cast list but still a very defined cast list, then that would be great. So then you're sort of thinking, okay, well, Siege of Malta, what do you need? Well, you need a submariner, you need a Spitfire pilot, you need some guys who are gunners, you need some civvies, you need a cross section, you need guys high up, you need guys sort of grunts on the ground. So you're looking for that sort of broad cast list that can sort of illustrate your bigger picture. So then it's a question of sort of going out and finding them, and sometimes there's sort of diaries and memoirs and stuff. Sometimes you need those gaps filled by veterans. And the great thing about interviewing veterans at that point was the really good ones had a sort of chance to kind of analyze their experiences. Because what tended to happen is you come back from the war, everyone's in the same boat. You don't want to talk about it. You don't want to make a fuss as a sort of, that kind of close in kind of atmosphere. And no one will understand anyway, apart from my mates who I was out there with or on the ship with or whatever it might be in the squadron with. And then you concentrate on getting on with your life and having a career and getting married and having kids and all the rest of it. And then your kids sort of go, oh, I get bored of you wanging on about the war all the time. So it's not until you kind of retire kids have left home, you've got a bit of time on your hand, and then suddenly the kind of, a ships association suddenly gets in contact, and you think, well, yeah, all right, I'll go along to that. And you meet all your old mates and so on and so forth, and you start reminiscing. So actually, the sweet spot is about sort of 65 to 80 years old. That's when you really, or 85. That's when you want to capture these people, because they've been through life, they've thought about it, they've read a bit around the subject, so they know the context in which they were fighting. And your ideal person was someone who kept a diary at the time, wrote a self-published memoir that no one's read, but is really on top of their, their stories and memories. And the great thing about talking to someone is you can ask them the questions that they might not have thought was very interesting when they're writing their diary, or indeed their post-war unpublished memoir or whatever. And you can ask them things like, what was it like wearing battle dress? What did what was the funniest thing that ever happened to you? Or or what did you think of the Bren? And did you ever have a chance to use any German weapons? And if so, what did you think of them? All these sort of things that most people just don't think to ask. So that was the advantage of veterans. And I was just really lucky. I just got them at a really, I just hit that magic moment in the 2000s where there was still plenty of people around and they wanted to talk about it. And then they were in that sweet spot age. So I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. I went all around the States. It depended what the subject was. I'd try and find people to fit. I'd have a gap in my cast list. So I'd go, okay, right, I need someone from the big red one. I need someone from the 1st Infantry Division, or I need a Spitfire pilot who was operating in Tunisia, or whatever it might be. And you go out and find them. And then then I increasingly started doing it kind of 360 degrees. So you do it with Germans and stuff. But I mean, I met some amazing people, and some of the funniest were, you meet some people who are just incredibly moving, incredibly upsetting. I mean, I remember talking to these Italian girls who'd survived a massacre in south of Bologna in the mountains, and oh my God, I mean, I can still remember that scene and her telling me about it, as if it was yesterday. It was just incredibly grueling and horrifying, and also just the sort of power of the spirit. I think that was the other thing that really comes across. But some people were just really, really funny. And I remember talking to this, British people tended to be more reserved, generally speaking. And I remember, talking to a guy called Tubby Crawford, who was the second in command of the HMS Upholder, which was the most successful Allied submarine of the war in terms of kind of tonnage sunk. And he was second in command of this one. And he was talking about this attack when they sunk the Conte Rosso, which was a troop ship of 18,000 tons in the Mediterranean in May 1941. They then got depth charged 36 times. And I said, God, it must have been absolutely terrifying. And I suppose it was a bit hairy at moments.
Classic.
And then I went to New Zealand and I interviewed these Maori, and they were just absolutely brilliant. There was a guy called Tinny Glover, and there was another guy called Mikey Parkinson. Mikey Parkinson had been a babyface guy. He kind of joined up at 17, ended up at the Battle of Alamein and then in Tunisia, and he lost a leg at Infidaville. And he said, fuck, I looked down at my leg and its fucking leg's gone, and fuck. Excuse my French. But, it was just, he absolutely said it as it was. And then Tinny Glover, he said to me, he said, when I got out there, he said, my uncle had been killed and my cousin been killed. So I really wanted to kill 3 Germans. It's like, okay. And he said, because I wanted to get 1 for my cousin, 1 for my uncle, and I wanted 1 for myself. Anyway, in his first action, he shot 4. So he said, so I got a bonus. And then he was talking about, then in the whole interview, he was brilliant. His memory was fantastic, but he was all over the place. So 1 minute he'd be talking about, catching his wife having an affair. Then he'd be talking about kind of being in Italy. Then he'd be talking about kind of Maori land rights. Anyway, then at one point we were talking about the war, and then I thought he was talking about Maori land rights. So he said, so anyway, this guy really, really pissed me off. And so I grabbed him by the neck, and I was just so mad. I was choking him, and I could see his eyes starting to bulge, and he nearly strangled him. I said, hang on a minute, Tinny, like, when was this? And he went, oh, this was last week. Like 84 at the time. Really funny.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's the Germans, and there was Germans that kind of broke down on me, having never spoken to anyone about their experiences and just finding the whole thing too traumatic. And there's others who were kind of, you know, proper evil Nazi bastards, and
Yeah.
you know, the dark pupils of their eyes sort of boring into your soul. I mean, it was pretty amazing. So yeah, I was incredibly lucky.
Do you record them like digitally and then?
Yeah, but you know, but in those days it was dictaphones with crappy little
Yeah,
kind
there's
of
little
plastic
tapes.
tape, and they're just
Yeah.
they don't hold up. I mean, obviously I've got them all transcribed. But I mean, if I was doing it now, I mean, Jesus, you'd have all the kit in the world, wouldn't you? You know,
Mm,
you'd film it, you'd have, you know, you'd have it on kind of, you know,
mm,
HD or 4K or something. You'd have amazing quality sound. I mean, you know, now there's these little crackly cassettes which are probably degraded since I recorded them, and they've probably
yeah.
kind of largely gone forever, unfortunately. But you know,
Yeah.
I've got the words on. You know, I've got them transcribed, so that's the main thing. I made some great friends as well along the way, but you know, like any walk of life, you know, there's some that you really warm to, become really really good friends, and you know, your mates until they pass away, and there's others you sort of think, well, take it or leave it, frankly.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
touched on something there, James, that just interested me, and that is you were saying that the English are a bit more, or the British Commonwealth troops were a bit more reserved. Um, do you think there's more American stories told because Americans are very good at talking about themselves? Not in an offensive way, but they are. They're very good at talking about themselves almost in third person and talking about what
Yeah.
they the
Well,
way.
they're more of an open society. Just in general, Americans tend to be more animated in conversation. And have you found that in your experience?
Yeah, I just think they just completely conform to national stereotype is the sort of general view. All the American veterans I met, to a man and to a woman, were all absolutely lovely. They
Mm,
couldn't have been nicer. They were so thrilled that a still young Englishman wanted to talk to them about their war experiences. You know, I spent nights with people. You know, they kind of, you know, invited me into their homes. You know, my home is your home, Jim. All this kind of stuff. They honestly just couldn't have been nicer, and lovely, and also self-deprecating.
Hmm.
Very few show ponies. I mean,
mm,
all the veterans, you know, a real veteran doesn't have to show off. You know, a
mm,
veteran who's really seen stuff,
mm,
that's enough. You know, and
yeah,
the British just tend to be a little bit more kind of self-deprecating and a bit more kind of reserved. You have to kind of sort of work at it a bit harder. Um, Germans just a complete sort of mixture. But again, you know, if a German has agreed to talk to you, they're happy to talk to you. You know, that's the thing. It's just fewer of them are or were. Um, but a lot of them again wanted a story. You know, I always, you know, when I used to write to them, I'd make it absolutely clear that I was coming from a completely objective point of view. I had no, you know, no axe to grind. You know, I just wanted to hear their story from their perspective. And so you know, I'd ask them about their childhood and Hitler Youth and stuff like that, but I wouldn't say, come on then, you were a real Nazi, weren't you? I mean, I wouldn't say anything like that. I'd ask them about their experiences and how they viewed their experiences, rather than sort of getting into the politics of it. So, you know, that kept it sort of, you know, clean, so to speak. Um,
mm.
but most I just feel incredibly lucky to have met those veterans. I mean, just as
Is
you are,
that
to
is
have met
that
those band of brothers, you know.
is that one of the greatest joys of your job then, really, would you say, is meeting the people? Obviously, they're fewer and fewer, obviously, because they're all dying or dead now. Is that something that's, I mean, eventually that will pass into history whenever there won't be any alive at all. But is that one of the great joys of your job?
Well, I think it
what's the
was.
most
I found
interesting
it quite
part of it?
difficult seeing them because they're all very diminished now. It's. I mean,
Mm,
I haven't interviewed I've spoken to veterans, but I haven't, you know, interviewed them in a kind of semi-formal capacity for quite a long time now, because I sort of got to the point where I was thinking they're just so old. Even if they're compos mentis, they're not going to be. Not going to have a lot to say. I mean, there have been some notable exceptions. You know, a tanker I met called Stan Perry. I met him when he was, you know, 96 or something, and he was sharp as you like, and you know,
yeah,
absolutely incredible. I met Dick Jesser, he's become a really good friend. He was a Iwo Jima veteran. He is 100, but you never
right.
know it. I mean, you know, he's incredible. For the most part, though, I don't want to think of that amazing generation as sort of shriveled up and kind of
Yeah.
wheelchair bound
Yeah,
and
yeah,
kind of,
good
you know,
point.
hey, what are you saying? You know, I don't want all that kind of stuff. You
And
know, so
what,
it's
just
sort
so,
of yeah, I find it kind of humiliating for them in a funny sort of way. You know, I mean, there's nothing humiliating about going old, but you just think about what they were and what they did, and it's so
exactly.
hard to make that connection to the men they were, the young men they were, sort of, you know, jumping around with Bren guns and Sten guns and what have you, and hurling
No, I
grenades.
totally agree with that.
Can't quite, it's the sort of difficult. So again, I think you were very lucky in getting those guys when they were still in their kind of late 70s, early 80s. You saw them at kind of, that's a really, really good time to talk to a veteran, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree, because sometimes there have been events where veterans have been there in the last few years, and they are very frail. Do you know what I mean? And there's these huge crowds asking questions, and do you know what I mean? The cognitive DL aren't quite there, and you just think, this is a great man. Just, you know what I mean?
Yeah. And you want to kind of sort of stare at them and admire them, but you don't actually really want them to be turned into a circus piece.
Well,
And no one's deliberately turning anyone to a circus piece. Everyone's just, and the thing is, not everyone was a hero, and not everyone did amazing things, by any stretch of the imagination, although anyone who joined up did so with huge amount of guts, and knowing that they were going to have to suffer, quite a considerable amount of privations and be separated from the world they knew for an unknowable future. So an unknowable period of time. So hats off to literally everyone. But there is a distinction. The guy who's sort of driving a truck kind of, 100 miles behind the line is not experiencing the same thing as someone who's in a tank at the front line, or someone in the 506 PIR or whatever. So it's just a different experience. And the problem is that as the numbers have become fewer, so those few have become more special, and they're now the standard bearers for a generation. And quite a lot of them don't want that standard bearer. They don't want to be standard bearers. They're proud of what they achieved and what they did, but kind of eschew the limelight. And you don't often hear people say sort of really crass things to people, and you really want to think, just
What's
respectful.
What was the greatest? When I was a kid, my dad sat me down to watch World at War. Was it who?
Yeah, that still holds
Who
up.
is the narrator of that famous
Laurence
actor?
Olivier.
Laurence Olivier. Would you say that, because they were obviously in their 50s then, a lot of them, 40s, 50s, because it was the 70s, wasn't it?
Yeah.
70s and early 80s. What is the
There's some amazing people on that.
What is the greatest sort of, obviously, one question would be, what would be the greatest film? You kind of said the Band of Brothers is one of the probably standard bearers, I would say. But what is the greatest documentary series or individual documentary you've seen on World War II or World War II?
Can I add to that? Can I say that you can include one shot during the war?
What do you mean, one shot?
Well, Cold Blue.
There is absolutely amazing footage that's shot in the war.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that though, but let me come back to the point about contemporary footage, because I've got a point about that. In terms of documentary series, yeah, I think it is. I think The Pity and the Sorrow, which is a French series that was made in the late 60s, is also absolutely remarkable. I would urge anyone to look it up. It's incredible. It was banned in France for a number of years because it's so controversial. So it had interviews with French people that were kind of collaborators and fighting for Vichy and all the rest of it. But it's amazing, absolutely amazing series. But yeah, The World at War is unsurpassed. The other one I would say is The Nazis: A Warning from History, which was made by Lawrence Rees, BBC a few years ago. Well, about 20, maybe even 30 years ago now. Quite a long time ago. But again, he had the last few of the Nazis. He had Hitler's secretary, had Charles Junger and people like that. They had incredible people on that series, and it really holds up. There's also the most brilliant documentary made by Michael Wood. Michael Wood was a kind of sort of hero of mine, TV history hero of mine when I was a kid. He used to make these amazing series called In Search of the Trojan War, In Search of the Dark Ages, Search of Alexander and stuff. And I absolutely loved him, and I got to know him. He became a friend and a colleague at one point. But he did this amazing series called Hitler and the Search for the Holy Grail. It wasn't a series, actually. It was a one-off film. It was made by a guy called Kevin Sims, who was he's a won all sorts of Golden Globes and BAFTAs and all sorts of stuff as a documentary filmmaker. Yeah, it's Hitler and the Search for the Holy Grail. It's all about the Nazis and the occult and stuff. It's absolutely amazing. It's the most beautifully made and beautifully shot film. I think you can still get it on YouTube. It's incredible. But it's sort of broad stroke series. Most documentary series are by their very nature kind of unsatisfactory, because you're just sort of scraping the top of the iceberg, and it's very difficult. I think documentaries recently haven't been terribly good on the whole, just for all those reasons, and they're always sort of sensationalizing. There's too much hyperbole and all the rest of it. And again, it's kind of much the same problem as making feature films, is that people are kind of searching for stuff that they don't need to search for. You know, the stories are really, really good. Just tell them, just tell it straight. You don't need to kind of embellish and kind of hunt out the kind of sensationalist stuff, because the real stuff is so good. But to go back to your point about contemporary footage, some of the footage is absolutely incredible. But what one has to remember is that there was no sound with it at the time for the vast majority of it. And I mean, so for example, the Imperial War Museum has got this incredible archive. It's absolutely amazing, as has the National Archives and Records Administration in NARO in the United States. The problem is if you are a punter and you're looking at it, what you're getting is some black and white soundless footage. And it just sort of goes, you know, footage taken in Normandy, July 1944 or something. It has no context. There's no, you know, if you don't, you just don't know what you're looking at. So I think the secret to that is to go through it and get someone to kind of sort of annotate it or comment over, you know, do commentary over it, so that you're contextualizing it, and then it's incredibly effective. You know, I was involved in a TV series a few years ago, just sort of on the edge of the pandemic, and I think it was called Lost Home Movies of the Nazis, or Nazi Lost Home Movies, or whatever it was. Basically, you know, the Nazis were absolutely obsessed with cameras and film footage, so they took loads and loads and loads of it. Obviously, as the war progressed, you know, it's kind of the last thing. You know, it's not a kind of sort of 100% necessary requirement, so it kind of got less and less and less. But in the early years, in the Blitzkrieg years and early years in the Eastern Front, you know, every Tom, Dick, and Harry had a cine camera and was taking all this footage and then sending it back home for development and everything. And then after the war, obviously, it's all a bit orcs. So, you know, what do you do with it? So you chuck it in a box and chuck it in the attic. And then, you know, your kids are clearing out your parents' attics once they've died. And you suddenly find all the stuff, and you don't know what to do with it. So all these little archives get springing up all over Germany with this absolutely amazing footage that was taken in the war, and which no one has seen for kind of, you know, 70, 75 years. So we made a 2-part film, a series about that for the BBC, and it was powerful stuff. And we did that in a kind of sort of goggle box way, so that they would film, you know, me and a few other people watching this footage for the first time. They just say, just say whatever the first thing that comes into your mind. You know, just tell me what you're looking at and what you're thinking, and what thoughts that conjures up, the footage that you're looking at. And of course, because you've been living and breathing this stuff, the war for such a long time, I sort of go, oh my God, look, that's X, and this must have been taken then, and what's happening at this moment is this, and this was just taken just after that, and you know, it contextualizes it. And I think that's a very, very effective way of dealing with that contemporary footage. And you know, I would, you know, there's constant plans to do that, but that's the way to deal with it.
We've got some of that in our family. My grandfather was in the German army, and he had a camera.
Well, there you go. I rest my
He had
case.
before Standard 8, he had these 3-minute film rolls.
Yeah,
And a camera that had the film rolls, I think, on the front.
lovely.
I don't even know what kind of camera it was. And he wasn't a frontline. He was already in his mid to late 40s when the World War II started.
Wow.
He was a policeman and kind of got drafted in. It was how Hitler made a big civil war. You know more, obviously, everything about it. Anyway, you did a great series on the end of the war, which I highly recommend for everyone, when they were coming into Berlin, when everyone was coming into Berlin. He had lots of footage of, you know, him and his fellow soldiers, wherever they were, I think in France and in Spain somewhere, and the Spanish border somewhere. He's got a lot of footage down there and stuff like that we saw when we were kids.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, you can't beat contemporary archive. I mean, camera doesn't lie, and you know, that was then. And I mean, have you ever seen that incredible footage of that tank battle in Cologne? It's absolutely amazing. So this cameraman comes in, he's recording, and they've got some Pershings, which are these kind of, you know, M26 Pershings that are like new battle tank. There's a couple of them anyway. This Sherman pushes forward, and there's a Panther, and he doesn't see the Panther, and he gets hit, and you see a guy kind of the tank commander bailing out with one leg missing. And he kind of rolls off the tank, and he doesn't survive. I mean, he survives for a few days, but he doesn't ultimately. He
You spoke about this in one of your.
Oh my God! It's amazing.
You just tracked down that footage. Yeah, because
just look up tank battle in Cologne, and that's it. It's absolutely amazing. Then you see the Pershing knock out this Panther tank, and you can see this hole. You can see the bright flame beyond the hole in the turret. It's just utterly chilling. You know, what you're watching is something that's happening for real in that moment. It's just, you know, and that frankly wipes the floor of,
Yeah.
you know, of
What
fury.
drew you on this journey? What you obviously were into World War II as a young child, were you? What do you have any
Yeah,
family
a
in the
little bit, and
war?
then I wasn't. I've always enjoyed my history, so I did a lot of history at school and did a degree in history. I never did any 20th century history at all. Um, but yeah, no, so I wasn't really interested in the Second World War. I do remember the 1995 commemorations, because I was in London at the time, and I remember going to Hyde Park where there was a sort of huge shindig going on. But really, it was, I must have been about 28, 29 at the time. I was playing cricket and a Spitfire flew over. And I remember turning to the umpire and going, "Oh my God, what's that?" And he said, "That's a Spitfire," in very sort of reverential tones. And the following week was Flying Legends at Duxford, which was a sort of warbird air show. So I took my ass up there, and that was it. That was it.
What year was this? What year was that?
Yeah, like 2000, something like that. So I was, you know, I was late entry.
Oh, right. So it wasn't from childhood then. Oh, right. Okay.
No, because you know, I became a teenager, sort of lost interest in all that.
Hmm.
I'd always been very interested when I was sort of late teens, early 20s. I was very into that sort of interwar period. Loved all those Merchant Ivory films, and you know,
Hmm.
Brideshead Revisited and
Yeah.
The View and stuff. I kind of was totally into that, the sort of that kind of yesteryear of.
Hmm.
So no, it always just sort of England just seemed sort of always sunny in those films, doesn't it?
It
Yeah.
does. I tell you what,
Great clothes.
yeah, I tell
Yeah.
you, James, is your friend Peter Jackson, who bought your book. He did that
Yes,
incredible documentary film on World War One,
yeah,
where
didn't he?
the actor's voice, their lip readers transcribe what everyone was saying, and then
Amazing, isn't it?
at that weird speed, and then it goes into normal speed and colorizes.
Uh huh.
You could get something really cool going on with the World War Two footage, all that great 16 mil footage.
Oh my God, you could. Well, there's all these series, aren't there, called World War Two in color and stuff like that, and yet more World War Two in color, and even more World War Two in color.
World War Two.
And actually, I've been talking heads on quite a number of those things. They're all a bit painful, I think, because you know what they're doing is they're trying to find the rather than telling the story of the films, they're trying to find the films to fit the stories, and quite often they don't. So they
Right. Hmm.
just fib.
Yeah.
You know, they just put the wrong footage to the wrong story, and you know, so it's all quite painful. Um, and that's the trouble is, you know, I mean, you can know too much when you're looking at these movies and when you're looking at these documentaries. It does sort of slightly spoil it. But on the other hand, you know, whether it be a video game, you know, Call of Duty, or whether it be World War Two in color or something, if that then takes people to the subject and you know encourages them to find out more, then you know, frankly, what's not to like?
Were
Hmm.
you were you affected? Do you remember seeing the epoch-making moment that was Saving Private Ryan?
Yeah, yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
I mean, there are historical problems with the opening 20 minutes. There's quite a lot of historical problems with the last 20
Oh,
minutes.
really? Like,
Yeah.
what, for example, is it apparently? I think I've heard
Well, you know,
apparently.
they're firing a machine gun from an observation post, which they weren't. There weren't any observation posts on Omaha Beach. You know, the Rommel's asparagus, which are the posts, they're facing the wrong way. Um,
Hang on, they're facing the things on the beach.
yeah, they're facing the wrong way.
They're facing the wrong way.
Yeah. But you know, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the point
Oh,
is,
wow.
it's an incredibly good depiction of
Yeah.
combat, and it's misleading as well because it's suggestive that every single bit of Omaha Beach was like that. I mean, you know, what Saving Private Ryan's doing is it's showing one part of a very small frontage of Omaha Beach on D-Day. You know, as tackled by the Rangers. By the time the Rangers were coming ashore, it really wasn't quite as bad as that. And the problem is you can come away thinking, oh my God, it was a wholesale slaughter, and that you know it must have been absolutely dreadful. I mean, 842 Allied troops were killed on D-Day in the Omaha Beach sector, which sounds like is a lot, but also I bet anyone who was watching Saving Private Ryan would think it was thousands. You know,
Yeah. Well, how many got
which it
through?
wasn't.
So 842
Well, like
survived.
35,000 landed.
All right. On that day, on D-Day.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That puts into perspective a little bit, doesn't
So
it?
you know, most people got away with it, and there are lots of people who landed in you know right at the beginning who got off the beach without being wounded and were absolutely fine, depending on where you landed. Fortunately, what happened was the wind sort of pushed them away from the kind of safer sections of the front of the beach and towards the stronger bits where these draws were, these exit points from the beach. So obviously, the exit points from the beach are the bits which are as a defender, you would want to defend more fully because they're the obvious points to land and they're the danger spots from a defense point of view. So obviously you're going to put more strong points around those. But as a kind of depiction of what it's like being in a kind of total hellish firefight, that's pretty good. And there's absolutely no question that the experience of depicted on Saving Private Ryan is very, very authentic and lifelike to a number of the people that experienced it. And I remember talking to a US Army Ranger who hadn't been on D-Day but had done a number of invasions, and he said, you remember that bit where Tom Hanks, he suddenly can't hear, he's got that kind of audio kind of, it just goes and he can't hear anything. He said that happened to me. He said just like that. So it's amazing. And what a great film. I mean, in my local cinema in Salisbury, they have a a night where they bring out something out of the the wardrobe once in a blue moon in the winter months. Earlier on this year, they had Saving Private Ryan on the big screen. So I said to my daughter Daisy, I said, "Oh look, you've got to come with me. Come with me for this." She quite enjoyed it. She thought it was pretty good. I thought it really, really held up. I thought it was a great film.
Yeah, fantastic.
Why is it a great film? Great script.
Yeah.
Great acting. Great
Yeah.
characterization. All the details look right. Rommel's asparagus aside.
What do you feel of the SAS? I don't. What's it called?
Rogue Heroes.
Rogue Heroes.
Rogue Heroes, which we love as entertainment, especially the.
Well, I really enjoyed the first series. I knew it was nonsense, but I kind of really, really enjoyed it. Second series, I can't cope with it because I know quite a lot about Paddy Mayne, and he is just not like Jack O'Connell. I mean, or Jack O'Connell's depiction of him. He's not this kind of ultra. It just is nothing. There's nothing about his portrayal of him that is remotely like Paddy Mayne. And that's the problem. And they're depicted as this sort of bunch of ill-disciplined kind of pirates. And they weren't. These guys were irreverent. They could let their hair down, certainly. But these guys, it was all about discipline. Because if you're not disciplined, you can't perform in action, as you guys would know from doing the Band of Brothers stuff. You've got to. You can have your characters and all the rest of it, but you've got to be well trained and well motivated, and you've got to be able to know what to do when the heat's on. And I just couldn't cope with it at all. The second series, I really.
Yeah, I found it difficult because the first one had that lovely sort of swashbuckling. It had the attitude that I wanted. And do you know what I mean? But the second one lost all of that charm.
Lost the plot.
And then it was just like you say, it was. And then going on to who is the guy that they focused on him for one episode, having a real tough time. I forget his name.
Oh yeah, Reg Seekings. Yeah,
Reg Seekings. That's right. Yeah, which I kind of.
Well, he did a bit, but I think he didn't.
Yeah, but we didn't need to see it. I just didn't feel that it needed to be a whole episode of it because do you know what I mean? I just kind of.
But again, the reality of what they did is so amazing. You don't need to kind of bullshit it.
Yeah.
I mean, the bit where they attacked the coast in Sicily, I had to give up after that. It was so far removed from the reality. It wasn't
really?
True. Oh, there's nothing like that at all. And it's really, when you know about that stuff, it's just really hard to watch it.
What would you like? What battle?
I thought the Narrow Road to the Deep North was really, really good. I mean, it is an amazing novel. If you haven't read that novel,
no, I haven't.
That is something else as well. By Richard Flanagan, won the Booker Prize. It's just amazing, but it's an incredible novel. And the TV, I haven't seen all the TV series, but the episodes I've seen are spot on.
What would you, if you could pick one battle or around one unit in the whole World War II, you'd see a dramatic version of it? What would you like to see?
HBO are doing it. There is massive budget.
Yeah. What would be your dream?
I do the Sherwood Rangers Yeomanry, who were the most single unit in the British Army, the most battle honours, and I did a book about it called Brothers in Arms, and I did their story from D-Day to the end of the war. Amazing characters, just amazing.
What was it, an infantry unit or
no, tank unit, Sherman tanks? That guy who met the Tiger, he was one of them, and just incredible characters, incredible drama. What a story that would make. That's the one to do, but it'll never happen because it's the money's in America, and understandably they want to do it about Americans. I totally get it, but that would be amazing. Get a lot of viewers.
Would.
Yes, yes, it would. Right, on that bombshell, Mr. Holland, thank you so kindly for coming on.
No, thank you very much for having me on. As I say, it's a great honour. You know, I thought Band of Brothers is a formative TV series. It's still the greatest, and you know, I've lost count how many times I've watched it. So, to be talking to you guys is great, and I've been lucky enough to meet a few of the boys over the years, and you've all been utterly charming and delightful company, and you've given me much pleasure both out of the Band of Brothers world and in it. So thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, James. It was
Yeah. Have you got, just before we go, James, have you got any book that you're plugging at the minute that's just about to come out or anything? I know you have a festival.
Oh, yeah. Well, I've got Victory 45, which I co-wrote with Al, which is about the end of the war. And yeah, we have Ways Fest. I don't know when this is going out, but that's on the 12th to the 14th of September at Black Pit, which is near Silverstone, and that's great fun. That's all stuff war, Second World War.
Most of our followers are going, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Well, listen, fellas, if you want to come, let me know, and I'll sort out some tickets for you.
Yep.
I'd love to see you there.
Brilliant.
1,000%.
Alex Brady's coming with his lot. So.
Oh yeah, Alex is going. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming, James. It's lovely.
Oh no, it's a pleasure. It's been great fun. Thank you very, very much. But seriously, if you do want the sorry,
the dog.
If you do want the if you can get there, I know you're in Berlin at the moment, Doug. But if you're back from there, and if you are around that weekend, then you'd be most welcome to come.
Well, I'll let you know. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic.
Please do.
Lovely to meet you.
See you there.
Well, see you again soon.
All right, all the best. Nice to talk to you. Cheers.
Cheers.
No,
I could have talked to that could have gone for hours.
I know. I think I asked about 3 of the 15 questions that I wrote, and I was just like, you know what? Just let him talk, mate.
Just let him talk, exactly.
Just shut up and let him talk. He's got a great voice. He's infectious. He knows his stuff. He's opinionated, which I love it when people are opinionated. Just fly. Yeah. Hates this, maybe hates that. Rolls asparagus the wrong way. It's great. It's great stuff. Why not?
Yeah. No, it's brilliant. Really, really fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, we could definitely, if we definitely have him on again at some point, next time he's got something to plug or whatever, it'd be fun. It'd be brilliant. But yeah, well, so are you going to that festival yourself, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, I might pop along. Yeah,
because it's kind of like there's a thing called like the Goodwood Festival of Speed or Goodwood Members Meeting, which is where it's old cars, but everyone dresses up from like the 50s and the 60s. Apparently, this festival's like that as well. Everyone kind of turns up in costume, don't they? Apparently,
right.
I think so. I think it's like that. You can if you want, sort of thing. People really get into it. I think it's a whole vibe of people kind of.
This is where you suggest we go in our band gear and then pretend we don't want to be recognised. I once went to this like big football thing, you know, when I put someone at Chelsea and I don't know, like for the public and everything. And he will remain nameless, but one of my fellow cast members of Renford Rejects turned up in his Renford Rejects outfit and then pretended he didn't want to get recognised.
Oh, no.
That was dude, come on.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right.
That was great. And just to end on, I don't know what you think about that, what I said. I do think Americans are better at talking about themselves.
Yeah, I do. I kind of feel, because they do have a history of, like, obviously, you know, things like therapy and psychotherapy kind of really landed in America, really, even though, you know, it's invented in Japan, it really landed in America before, like everyone, you know, and I do feel you're right. I do feel that they're kind of a bit more, almost more of a natural orator, natural storytellers, and more open. They're just kind of more open.
And even now, you know, they all do public speaking at school and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's just part of the culture that they can get up and speak about themselves. Whereas we have terribly sort of apologetic. Oh, I'm terribly sorry. I don't sound like an arse.
Yeah, and incredibly reserved. I do feel you're right. I think that's, like I say, it's a stereotype, but it is one that holds true. I do believe that. Yeah.
Right on. All right, brother. Well, thanks to everyone. Thanks to the Patreons. Thanks for everyone tuning in. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Cheers.
Bye.